Okay, let's talk about this deal. Let's break it down, okay? Because there's a lot of people out there saying this is great and this is a turning point and so forth. And yes, any respite from the fighting is good, especially from the people in Gaza who are suffering from the fighting, and especially for the families of whatever hostages are returned. But it's really important to understand what this deal is and what it is not. So, step one in understanding that, I strongly urge you to go and listen to the DSR podcast from yesterday with Alon Pincus and Noga Ternopolsky. They talked about it and they gave perspectives on Israeli politics and Israeli views that you're not going to get anywhere else. I didn't see anybody talking about that on the media last night. And I know about it because I was actually on the media last night. I was on MSNBC talking about this, me, Ari Melber, and Ambassador Dennis Ross, one of our most experienced negotiators. Dennis was positive that this might be a turning point. I was the one who played the role of a bit skeptic. It's not that I am not positive, about a ceasefire being achieved, but I do think we need to recognize that this ceasefire is just the first step. It's tenuous. It hasn't even been ratified, as Riley just indicated, by the Israelis. It's not going to have the Israelis leave Gaza. They're just going to pull back from centers of population. So they could go in at any time. And there's a big group of Israelis who don't feel the job is done. And some of those people, supporters of those people, are in the Israeli military. So we're going to have to watch that very carefully. And of course, Hamas has lost its leadership, is broken up, is diffused. The anger among the people is palpable. People will continue to die, starve, and suffer. And so that could create tensions that could lead to a breakdown in the ceasefire. The ceasefire is supposed to lead to 600 truckloads of humanitarian supplies arriving on a daily basis, but that's a long shot. It's going to be difficult getting 600 truckloads loaded and into Gaza, and to keep those truckloads from being looted. And even those 600 truckloads are far from enough to deal with the humanitarian crisis afflicting the 2 million people in Gaza. In addition, the 20,000 tents that have been promised are hardly enough, given that all of the housing stock of Gaza has been eliminated. The people who are being allowed to move within Gaza back into the north are going to have to do so on foot and return to an area that has been absolutely devastated. So this is phase one, and it's pretty tough. But phase one doesn't release all the hostages. It just releases apparently 33 of them, and those on a staggered basis. There are probably 65 hostages who are still alive. So it's about half of them, probably none of the military-age men. That'll probably be the women, the children, the elderly. But the rest won't be released until phase two. And phase two will not take place until there is a agreement on who will succeed Hamas, the leadership. And that takes both the will and people to step up within the Palestinian territories, but it also takes the Israelis to accept it. So it's a much bigger hurdle. And if that hurdle doesn't get cleared, then we don't get to a permanent ceasefire, and this thing could break down at any moment. We also, if that does not happen, we don't get to the kind of rebuilding, which is part of phase three, that is absolutely essential, will cost tens of billions of dollars, will require the international community, will require Israel's neighbors to step up. And they're not going to step up unless A, there's new Palestinian leadership, B, the Israeli leadership has either changed or demonstrated new views and willingness to accept a two-state solution, and C, there is a clear path to a two-state solution. All of those things are out there. Is this better? Yes. Is this complete? No. And we need to understand it. We also need to understand the fact that this is the deal that was proposed last spring. The Israelis could have agreed to it at any time along the way. They say it was Hamas. It was not Hamas. It was Israel that was not agreeing to the critical parts of it, dragging its feet. And then when Biden stepped down and it looked like Trump was going to have a better chance of stepping into the presidency, Netanyahu hit the brakes. But in August and September, Netanyahu saw a change in the Israeli parliament, which meant that he could actually have approved this deal back then without having the far right pull out of his coalition and end his prime ministership. And so, there were 4 or 5 months since then where the Israelis could have accepted this deal and didn't. And if they didn't over that period of time, and with the far right led by Smotrich and people like that saying, no, we must go in, we must fight, we must complete the job, and so forth, we're a long way from getting an Israel that has the leadership mindset to get to peace. The Palestinians don't have a leadership infrastructure, and all of that's a problem. Parts of the Middle East look more hopeful. Trump played an important role in getting this deal done. Not that an incoming president should play such a role, and frankly, his Middle East negotiator was in the middle of these negotiations for the past few weeks in Doha, and the Biden administration acknowledged the important role that they played. But Trump has an opportunity, and the point that Dennis Ross made last night on Ari Melber's show was Trump now owns this deal, and so he's going to want it to stay in place. I'm not sure that's the way Trump views this, and I'm not sure that they're going to prioritize this. I think it's much more likely that they say, well, let's just get this on the down low. Let's sort of not resolve it and just try to keep it from breaking into something worse. And let's focus on things like normalization between Israel and Saudi, where he's got leverage on both sides, and he can claim as the next phase in the Abraham Accords. So broadly, the Middle East is at a moment where there is some opportunity because of the defeat of Hezbollah, the defeat of Assad in Syria, the defeat of Hamas, the weakening of Iran. But the people of Gaza shouldn't be forgotten. 40 to 70,000 of whom, most of whom were innocent, have died. Hundreds of thousands have suffered. Virtually all have been dislocated. The country has been essentially eliminated from an infrastructure point of view. And they will remain one of the great humanitarian crises on the planet for the next several years. So by all means, be pleased for a respite, but do not accept this at face value.